Record. I'm going to record this. I'm going to talk about what Professor Anton was talking about socializing. I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes, and I'm going to try to limit it to 10 minutes, about sociality and seeing it from the other person's perspective. I think that's the key right there. Is that, animals really cannot see the world from another animal's perspective or even from a human perspective. And they are able to fully function within, and I think that's a wonderful, thought on that. To be able to function within this, they're like a totally contained world. But I think for a human, we are also in a totally contained world. Maybe it's even an illusion that we really see it from the other person's perspective. That I'm going to kind of be a little bit nuts and go out on a bit on a limb and say that we actually have kind of an illusion, but it's an effective illusion that we actually see things from the other person's perspective. It's a very effective illusion. We think we feel other people's pain, for example. We think we feel other people's things. When I tell people about, what it's like to be diabetic, what it's like when your blood sugar drops, all those things, I think people, unless you have that experience, you really don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to go through everything that I have to go through. But you try to understand. You try to get it. You try to understand. I think this is true when I'm trying to understand an experience somebody else had. Like my father, for example. My father fought in the Korean War, and I try to understand, what it would be like. I try to use my imagination to imagine what he went through. I listened to, some of the things he talked about, the war stories or whatever. And I've listened to other soldiers talk. People have actually fought in wars. I know friends of mine who lived in other countries. People who weren't soldiers, for example, who just, basically non-military people caught in crossfire, like a friend of mine from Bolivia talking about the situation when it would be like an overthrow of the government, and how it just, that experience. I know some people told me about when some people from Africa, and they were caught in a crossfire in the city. They didn't have nothing to eat. They actually had to eat dogs and cats, anything you saw, because there was no food. There was no way to get to a market. There was nothing you could do. You had to just basically try to survive. And I try to understand things from their point of view. I've never had those experiences, and I think of experiences I've had that other people have never had. But we try. See, that's the thing. I think what's important is we make that attempt, and through dialogue with people, through becoming the term as you use, otherized by other people, and I think that's what makes us human. We have to kind of have this structure, and I think that there are things that we have within us, a kind of structure within our minds that makes us human. That's just, it's not even something you learn, but there's a kind of knowing how to be human. A human has to be a human. There's something that when we interact with each other, it works that way. It works that way, like language. See, a dog or cat can't understand human language because it's simply because they are not made to process that, which kind of gets me into something. I'm not going to get into a religious thing, because I could go into this creation issue, which I'm not. That God created us with this certain powers or whatever. I don't know, but we evolved in such a way that makes that link between people, and that link between each other in the human world comes from imagination. It comes from empathizing. It comes from this way in which we make an attempt to transcend. That making an attempt to go beyond ourselves. I don't think we really do it. I don't think we really go beyond ourselves. I don't think we really do that. But I think we have the sense that we do it. And sometimes it seems to work, because we find ourselves, I think when you know that you really have gone beyond yourself, is when you are, for example, in situations where you have to actually help people, and you find yourself being effective in helping others. When you find yourself being effective, like when I used to work as a translator, and it's not just the translating language, but feeling what other people feel, because there are people who come there with all kinds of illnesses and things which I've never experienced, but I try to empathize with them. Like some woman who possibly might have had ovarian cancer, but had to be diagnosed. Another man who had Hodgkin's disease. Somebody else who was, many times there were people with HIV positive. Someone who had tuberculosis. Just all a whole bunch of different things. And you try to be effective in a funny way. I really couldn't. I can only imagine. I imagine what it would be like if somebody told me this. Or you can listen to what people tell you. Now, if they have a pain here or a pain there, or this persistent pain, and it's like a lot of things. You try to do that, and I think in that attempt, somehow we do. Something happens. A transformation happens in the very process of attempting to understand, in really putting forth the effort to try to understand. We do kind of develop. Now, this gets me into some things which I think are important, and I actually wish I could make 50 different videos. So I'm trying to compress this into 10 minutes, because there are other areas I could talk about, things such as synchronicity and so on and so forth, which I think get involved. Synchronicity being the meaningful coincidence issue, not so much cause effect, not so much extending out and actually knowing what other people feel, but synchronizing your feelings with their feelings, to feel as they feel, and attempt a kind of aligning with other people. I think we try to do that. I think that we make the attempt to do it. And I think something in some way that I can only call magical, and I don't mean that in a supernatural sense, but for lack of a better word, some sort of magical thing does happen where we do click. I think people who really try to understand my condition, for example, my medical condition, they do click in some way. They kind of, in some synthesized way, in some synthetic way, they do understand. No, they actually don't. I mean, if I could sort of like magically snap my fingers and they could actually have my condition, even if it was just for a day, then they would say, yeah, I can, wow, this is a little bit different than what I expected, but still, it wouldn't change how they treat me. And that's where I would know that they got it, from the way they treat me, from the way they interact with me, from the way they kind of synchronize with me. In the same way I would synchronize with somebody else. See, I can sort of be very effective at dealing with helping a woman, for example, who's maybe going through a pregnancy. I'll never know what it's like, or at least not in any way I can think of what it's like to be pregnant. But I can be an effective person. And in that sense, you say, yeah, she may say, well, you know what it's like, or you are. I mean, she may think, yeah, you really don't know what it's like, but you are effective. And somehow that's more important even than if you really did know. Maybe it kind of gets into Einstein's famous quote when he says imagination is more important than knowledge. See, we can never really know what other people are. But it may be more important to really imagine what other people go through, and to really imagine. Because through imagination, it is probably the only way we really can, in a way, it is the only way, in a certain way, we can experience things from the other person's perspective. And that's what I have to say.